Hello, hello. Welcome to the Autism 360 podcast, the 360 Method, a weekly podcast where we talk about everything Autism 360. Each week, we'll be catching you up with what's going on in the program, chatting with team members, and talking all things mindset, as well as exploring relevant ideas that autism parents think about. So, welcome. I'm your host, Ella Bailey. I'm Autism 360 veteran coach and explorer of all things parenting support. And lucky me, today I'm joined by the talented and fabulous Ashleigh Hyman, one of our parent coaches here on the program. Ashleigh joined the program in August 2021 and has helped dozens of families since then, and especially developing a bit of a interest in ADHD. Ashleigh, how are you?
Hi, hello, good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, always a pleasure, never a chore. And welcome to our lovely listeners. We're so happy to have you. Thank you for tuning in, and we care about your thoughts and experiences, whether you're a program member or not. We would love to hear from you. So please drop us a line at hello@autism360.com because we love our listener feedback. I'm sure Ashleigh would agree that the parents are the paramount, most important part of our program. So we love to hear from you.
Yes, definitely.
Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, on whose land I live and work, and from where this podcast is being broadcast today. And also just mention that this is not a substitute for medical or allied health advice. If you're worried about your kiddo or you have concerns about yourself, please do get in contact with your GP or get in contact with the program. We'd love to be able to support you on your journey. So, Ashleigh, now we get to talk about the good stuff.
Absolutely. We can dive straight on into it. So, most of us already know what ADHD is. So, today, the main thing I want to cover is strategies that we could employ to help our little kiddos.
Awesome.
So, I'll quickly cover what ADHD is, but then move straight on to the exciting stuff.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
ADHD, it's a condition that affects somebody's ability to concentrate. So, people with ADHD will usually experience periods of time where they are inattentive, hyperactive, or impulsive. This generally will be at a level that it will interfere with their daily living functions.
Okay. And so, this is something that you see a lot in the program. You see a lot of kiddos coming in with ASD, but then showing a lot of ADHD signs. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ADHD and ASD, there seems to be more and more kiddos getting diagnosed with both. If not, sometimes parents suspect it, they're going through the process. So it's definitely one to discuss because we can employ some simple strategies that also help with ASD as well. So definitely these strategies are quite helpful for the both.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's get started. What's your
All
first
right.
hot tip?
My first hot tip is going to be a memory prosthetic.
Mm,
So, what it means is using written instructions or visuals to help the kiddo remember and accomplish steps to a task. So, you could create, say, a visual routine for their morning or afternoon. It's got pictures and the written words of each step to complete that. So instead of just saying it's time to get ready for school and expecting them to remember each step of what that is, they can work step by step with basically the visual being their memory.
okay. And so, what's the difference between that sort of support and just like a visual schedule? Is it the way you implement it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the way that it's implemented. Look, they can be confused a lot. The two can be considered quite similar, but what we want is we want to break down every single step.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not glossing over, we're very specific so that we are assisting with, say, if they're having an inattentive morning, they just have to simply glance at that to remember where they were and where to move on to.
Okay, I see. Could you give an example of a routine that you might use that kind of prosthetic for?
Yeah, absolutely. So something as simple as, say, brushing your teeth.
Okay.
So breaking that completely down to the point of we get our toothbrush, we get toothpaste, we put toothpaste on the toothbrush, we put it under the water, and then going through to the steps of what we brush: front teeth, back teeth, tongue, rinse our mouth. So every single little step, just to set them up for success. It can be done as simply as creating it on a Microsoft Word document that's visually attractive, or there is a great product you might have heard of, Talking Points.
I think I have heard of that. Yeah. For parents? What is a talking point?
Yeah, so a talking point is you can record your voice basically talking your kiddo through a process. So it can be multi-step instructions that you record, and then your child can press the button to replay as many times as they need to get through that process. So this could be a good one for, say, after school, where their bag goes, there is this big button waiting to be pressed. They press the button and it tells them the expectation of unpacking their bag. Take your lunchbox out, put it in the kitchen, get your drink bottle, shoes off. And so if they get distracted, you could refer them back to the button, they press it again and see where they got to before wandering off. So that's a super helpful one, and it's attractive for kiddos. What kiddo doesn't want to push a giant button?
Especially if it's red. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
basically a few quick tips for memory. But basically, there is apps these days that will help. And if you don't want to do apps, then going with visual instructions is a really good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the kiddos that I've worked with who have that attention deficit, it helps that multisensory support. So
Yes.
you've got the visual in combination with the audio version of the instruction, like the talking point, or
Yes.
it also helps to, you to move them through the stations of their routine or whatever. So they have all these different ways to engage with the instruction to help support their
That's right.
memory.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also really kind to them, considering everyone remembers things differently. Having both visual and verbal, they've got that better chance of absorbing the task and remembering the steps for next time. So, yeah, doubling up, sometimes might be overwhelming, but in a lot of cases, it can improve their learning.
Totally. And I'm a verbal processor. No wonder I have a podcast.
Yeah. There we
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what else have we got? What other
go.
strategies are your hot tips?
Number two is also a super important one: motivation. Because honestly, in order to persevere with any task, you have to be motivated. So we can't expect any differently of our kiddos. So in the 21st century, obviously a great way of utilizing motivation is going to be apps and technology.
Totally.
So starting there, I guess, is finding the apps that can get the task done in a motivating and fun way. So an example of that would be, again, the morning routine. We could utilize an app like the Kids To-Do List by Little Eco that allows you to edit and create a visual routine, and when they complete it, they tick off stars that pop. And when they get through the whole routine, it gives them a little 30-second game to play.
That's fun. I love that. Okay.
Yeah, so obviously increasing motivation, well, how can we make it fun? Of course, there is rewards, which is when they get to the end, but the motivation to get through is what we need to spend some more time finding those creative ways. So that is one way. If you want kind of a technology free version, there's always working towards tasks. So breaking it down, they do step one and they get a little reinforcer motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the simple ways. But I mean, Ella, what's your experience with, technologies and apps as a motivational tool? Do you
Oh my
agree?
goodness. Yes. There's one that's standing out to me, which was this beautiful little girl that I was working with who just wasn't on board with toothbrushing. She was just not about it. It was not her mood.
Yeah.
And we were really struggling to obviously help look after her oral hygiene.
Hmm.
So I went on a good old internet search, and I found this app that syncs with their toothbrush. And so the app brings up a picture, it's all covered in bubbles, they can't see what it is. And as they move the toothbrush around in their mouth, it slowly reveals a new picture every day. And
I love that.
yeah, super fun. And it whatever the character on their toothbrush is, like Elsa or whoever, um, that's the picture that comes up on the app. So that was a
Oh,
really fun one.
yes, that's really
Yeah,
good. And see,
I believe it was by
that's
Oral B, an Oral B app.
Oral B.
Yeah,
Good to know. And
yeah,
see, that's just a quick and easy way to, utilize technology. We're not saying if you do this, you get the iPad for an hour. It's using it in the moment. That's brilliant. I love that.
yeah, super fun.
Yeah.
And it also times the activity without timing the activity, because they have to
Mhm.
see the whole way through to be able to get access to that picture at the end, which takes time.
Yes. Yeah, not a daunting countdown or, yeah, I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'll dive into my third strategy. Um, so, my third strategy is physical exercise. Now, we all know, doctors say physical exercise is good for everything. That's nothing new. With ADHD, research has found that people with ADHD have higher levels of theta brain activity.
Okay.
Now, this activity is known as the sleepy brainwave. But exercise, that increases a different brainwave called beta,
Hmm.
which increases focus and attention. So when you look at it from that perspective, physical exercise is going to increase the exact brainwave needed to assist in attentional skills.
Hmm.
So just a small amount of physical exercise broken up throughout the day is going to kind of fight for that good brainwave activity that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. I found a lot of kiddos that do have that more hyperactive form of ADHD. A really highly cardiovascular form of exercise actually heightens their hyperactivity. Have you ever noticed that, or gotten feedback from parents around that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's just how we pick and choose the activities suitable for those moments then.
Totally.
So, for example, if we're just needing them to focus and attend to their meal at hand
Mm,
and not get distracted so that they eat enough,
mm,
um, well, it's mealtime, and if it's dinner, it's going to be bedtime soon. We're definitely not going to recommend something that's too stimulating.
mm,
But it could be something as simple as breaking up their dinner time into, hey, can you go get this from the other room for me?
mm.
And just giving them that small permission to move.
Yeah.
If they end up skipping or running there, that's their exercise, that's their movement. But yeah, absolutely, it's kind of picking and choosing that level of stimulation in the right moment.
Yeah, I've definitely found that when I guide my more hyperactive kiddos towards um, weight bearing type exercises rather than high cardiovascular output type
Hmm.
exercises, you tend to see an increase in the regulating nature of it. So things like um, hanging from a set of monkey bars where they're having to support their own weight, or doing wheelbarrow runs where they're having to move but with the weight of a peer or whatever
Yes.
with them,
Yeah.
or a backpack full of books while they're running or something like that, helps to decrease that like agitation response that you can get from high cardiovascular output activities, whilst also getting the benefits of those beta brain waves that are brought on by exercise. That's my little pro tip from the field.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah,
Definitely. Simple things like moving the laundry basket,
that's it.
pushing it along the floor. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, and my final strategy is music. Now, it can be considered an interesting one. Hear me out.
Okay,
Um,
I'm listening.
Playing music in the background, believe it or not, will help with overall focus. So I'm not talking something too engaging, like the kiddo's favourite song that they can't help but sing and dance to.
Okay,
That's going to pull them away from that homework you're trying to get them to do.
totally.
But I'm talking music with a constant and slow beat. So this could be, a Spotify playlist. Spotify has a bunch of ADHD playlists
Hmm.
that all follow that constant slow beat.
Wow.
Now, having that in the background is in their subconscious awareness,
Hmm.
but it allows them to focus more on the task in front of them instead of trying to process multiple things at once. There is something that's at least consistent in the background.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of an interesting one. It's one that you've kind of got to give it a go before you believe it. I hear you, that's fine. Absolutely, instead of getting distracted by, say, the changing of TV channels in the background, this
Mhm.
consistent beat is going to be a lot less stimulating, and therefore focusing on the task at hand is a lot easier.
Yeah, interesting. I've in the past had some success with families whose whose children were struggling with that auditory overwhelm or being overly stimulated by the auditory inputs in their environment
Yeah.
with trying out a bunch of different uh, white noise tracks. So there's all sorts of different um, sound wave levels and stuff that are coming in through like white noise or pink noise or brown noise. They all have different kind of
Frequency.
frequencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
I
Um,
get
kind of auditory qualities, and they can
you.
really help because our brain, after a little while of processing the same sound for um, a few minutes at a time, it starts
Yeah.
to tune it out. And
Yes.
everybody has had this experience where you tune back into something and you think, how long have I been listening to this for? I don't, where am I? um
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that sometimes those like white noise or pink noise tracks in the background, because they're so easy for our brain to tune out, it can actually help with reducing the auditory overwhelm, which is kind of counterintuitive,
It is, yes,
right? When
but
you're
less
adding more
spontaneous.
sound. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and that is the thing. After 10 minutes, we do. So, if you take away that spontaneity of the child is, oh, what was that sound? Or what am I missing out on? And put that consistent beat in, it is a lot easier in the long run.
Yeah, fascinating how the brain works, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely.
Endless.
Endless. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that. I do have a parent question for this week on this topic, which I'm going to fire at you. And folks, Ashley has had no preparation for this. I do not apologize
I
for
love
that.
it.
Rhonda from Darwin asks, my child isn't hyperactive, but she can't seem to concentrate on any tasks, even ones she likes. It also seems like she gets fatigued really easily. Do you have any suggestions?
Absolutely. The two quick ones that come to mind, one is chunking tasks.
Okay.
Um, so if a task has a designated finish, who says that's the designated finish? Let's, chunk it into 3 separate intervals that they can get through. And that allows for a little break in between. So instead of having to push through what they perceive as a big task, we can break it down into 3 bite-sized little pieces. So chunking, that's a really important one. And the second one I would say is including movement breaks in there. So like I said with the dinner time, while your child is kind of low and not hyperactive, they might still need to just wander around to then come back to the task at hand. So giving them little movement breaks that you can specifically suggest what they do. Star jumps, can you go get this from the kitchen? It just allows them to have that little break before continuing on.
Amazing. Any other thoughts for Rhonda?
Look, honestly, with that, it's just keeping in mind that if your child's kiddo is of school age, school is a really taxing time. They have a lot of demands placed on them. They have a lot to get through. So if you're noticing that kind of exhaustion in the afternoon, put in more of those respite breaks. So do chunk all tasks. Give them time to rest and recover. So just be mindful of, what is there a part of the day where these sorts of strategies are needed most, and having a look at that.
Okay, I love that idea. And I think you're right in, I guess, just flagging for parents how much more of a demand our kiddos on the spectrum are having to deal with in a school day than a neurotypical kid.
Yeah.
They really are having to work much harder to engage in school, especially if it's a mainstream school. They're having to work so much harder to engage in the tasks that a neurotypical child, potentially is breezing through.
Absolutely.
And taking
Yeah.
that into consideration when we're, again, expecting them to be able to continue on that focus into the afternoon or
Yeah,
whatever it might
absolutely.
be.
And that is, yeah, it's a lot more taxing for them to get through that day. So, when you think about the demands of school, it's no surprise that you might notice it more in the afternoon. If you're noticing it more in the morning, then obviously there's looking into sleep and that sort of thing. But yeah, when it comes to that low energy side, it's just making sure that we're being fair to their little growing bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being exhausted after school, and I didn't even have ADHD. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, thank you for coming on, Ashleigh. I love picking your brain about this sort of thing.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And no doubt I will come a knocking on your door again sometime soon.
Sounds like a
Until then, everybody, I can't wait until next week where we talk about another topic that's relevant to autism parenting. Until then, please do drop us a line, hello at autism360.com. And until then, think 360.